you will have 10 minutes to present so that we can have discussion. So Saloni can start. You can share the screen. Some of you are still disorganized and not opening your videos as required as per your alphabets. We have only Ankit and Ananya on video, and Saloni, of course. Saloni, your mic is off.
Sorry, ma'am. Sorry. Yeah. So, very good afternoon, friends. तो आज का जो टॉपिक है हमारा वो है मतलब वो है अ क्रिटिक ऑफ सेक्स जेंडर डिस्टिंक्शन बाय मोइरा गेटिंस। तो कल हम लोगों ने इस टॉपिक पे बात किया बायोलॉजिकली लाइक हार्मोन्स के बारे में, क्रोमोसोम के बारे में, साइकोलॉजिकली बात किया या इंटरसेक्स जो बच्चे होते हैं उनके बारे में बात किया। तो आज का हमारा टॉपिक रहेगा वो होगा सोशियोलॉजिकल। तो एज ऑफ नाउ मुझे लगता है कि सब लोग ये समझते हैं कि मतलब अग्री करेंगे आई मीन टू से कि सेक्स जो है वो बायोलॉजिकल है और जेंडर जो है वो सोशियोलॉजिकल है। अगर किसी को कुछ कमेंट है इस पे तो प्लीज अपना मतलब आप अपना कमेंट ऐड कर सकते हैं।
Saloni, I suggest you please present what Moira Gatton has said, and then we can go on the comments.
ओके मैम, ठीक है। तो मोइरा गेटिंस का कहना है कि सेक्स जेंडर का जो डिस्टिंक्शन है उनके ऊपर वो मतलब क्वेश्चन कर रही है, क्रिटिसिज्म कर रही हैं उनका। और उसके पीछे रीजन ये है कि हम कहते हैं सेक्स जो है वो बायोलॉजिकल है और जेंडर जो है वो सोशियोलॉजिकल है। लेकिन उनका कहना है कि ऐसा नहीं है। सेक्स जो है मतलब जेंडर जो है वो भी सेक्स के बेसिस पे ही मतलब मतलब फाउंडेशन जो है उसका सेक्स ही है। जब हम किसी बच्चे को देखते हैं तो उसके बाद से ही हम उनका सोशलाइजेशन शुरू कर देते हैं। अगर वो लड़का है तो उस तरह के इन्वायरमेंट में हम उनको बड़ा करेंगे और लड़की है तो हम फिर उस तरह के इन्वायरमेंट में उनको बड़ा करेंगे। इसके ऊपर थ्योरी भी है इंसेंशलिस्ट वर्सेस इन्वायरमेंटलिस्ट जेंडर पे। सो लाइक टू हैव एन आइडिया, आप मुझे बताओ। या तो मेरा लास्ट जो है वो यहाँ तक था, वन इज नॉट बॉर्न रेदर बिकम अ वुमन। आप लोग में से कोई बता सकता है कि इस बच्चे का जेंडर क्या है और टू से सेक्स क्या है? एनीवन? एम आई ऑडिबल?
Yes.
ओके,
Yes,
एनीवन
audible,
प्लीज?
but no, the photograph at which angle it has been taken, nobody can say that which gender they belong to.
ओके,
It is
नाउ
the same the angle of photography.
ओके, नाउ
Yeah, sure. Because of their clothings, people can predict
लाइक सी इज अ गर्ल, ही इज अ बॉय, राइट?
exactly. Exactly.
कैन यू सी नाउ?
Yeah, definitely. Because of his haircut, in social condition in which this boy is getting born, we can predict that he is a boy.
थैंक यू। नाउ
Same getup. She is a girl because she is raised like a girl with clothing society. That's it.
या एग्जैक्टली अपीयरेंस पे। नाउ
Same
So,
girl.
Sonali,
या
Saloni,
राइट,
please
दिस इज
focus.
लास्ट
No,
वन।
no, no. Skip, skip. You have only 10 minutes. You already spent 3. And
Okay,
we're
ma'am,
still not
participant
on,
has to
yeah,
give me.
we're still not on the article.
Yeah, no, ma'am, I am. Just the last one. What do you think? Like, is he's a boy or girl? Anyone, please.
What is the point? What is the point?
Point is that, ma'am, he is dressing like a girl, but he is not a girl. In back in 80s, 8084, this photo was taken in 8084, but at that point of time, boys was dressed like this. मतलब लड़के फ्रॉक्स पहनते थे, इस तरह के होते थे. और अभी जो है, अब हम जो बात करते हैं, ठीक है,
That is
स्टेरियोटाइप्स है.
not the point which Moira Gatens is making. Come to Moira Gatens, please.
ओके मैम. ओके फाइन. तो मॉरेगेटिन्स का जो आर्टिकल है वो 3 क्वेश्चन के बेसिस पे. फर्स्ट वो बात करते हैं थ्योरेटिकल बेसिस, जिस पे सेक्स और जेंडर जो है वो डिस्क्रिमिनेट मतलब डिस्टिंक्शन होता है, ठीक है, जिसमें हम लोगों ने सोशियोलॉजिकल जो हम पॉइंट अभी बात कर रहे थे, ठीक है, वो ये है कि हम कैसे एक जेंडर मतलब सेक्स को देखते हैं. और जैसे कि सेकेंड वेव ऑफ फेमिनिज्म में कहा गया है कि वन इज नॉट बॉर्न रादर बिकम अ वुमन. सो हाउ शी इज बिकमिंग अ वुमन. हम कहते हैं कि सेक्स जो है वो बायोलॉजिकल है, बट जेंडर जो है वो सोशियोलॉजिकल है. बट वो जेंडर जो है वो सोशियोलॉजिकल कैसे बन रहा है, क्योंकि सेक्स को हम सोशलाइज कर रहे हैं. इफ अ
This is
बेबी
not the
इज.
point which Moira Gatens make. Anybody else? Ananya, do you want to share, or Medha? What is your understanding of what is Moira Gatens saying?
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, I wasn't able to understand it completely, but what I understood was that when we say that sex is like a rigid biological entity and gender is a rigid sociological construct. So what we mean to say that when a baby is born, it is like a clean slate.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the gender he or she is developing, it is only because of the environment that person is being subjected to.
Mm-hmm.
So when we put forth this point, so then we can argue that if we are teaching a person the gender, so we can reteach the person something else also.
Okay.
And when we put forth this point, so this brings the degendering or the gender neutral aspect, and in this neutralizing of gender, the male qualities are given a precedence.
Right.
And there are many feminists who who support the gender neutralizing aspect of society, but Moira Gatens is against these points.
Yeah, so this is what ordinarily people think, that you socialize them in a particular manner. So whatever Saloni was showing was an example of that, what has been the traditional thinking about how gender develops. You start giving them certain kind of clothes, certain kind of haircuts, certain kind of teachings, certain kind of behavioral directions, and that is how gender develops and socialization. But Moira Gatens' basic point is that this is not so simple, because it was so simple. You give them a different orientation and they will all become, everybody will become gender sensitive. She's saying that sex itself is gendered. We have put categorization in the category called sex. We view our bodies as inferior and superior things, which will, and that has led to the whole manner in which the society is settled. Ananya, do you want to say something?
The same which she added, that she's Moira Gatens is basically questioning that how will I say that
Body is viewed as foundation on which
after
sex is
birth your
constructed.
body, you are not a clean slate. Like she's questioning that कि we are saying कि आपको जैसा environment दिया जाएगा वैसा ही होगे, but she's questioning we are not post natality. She has used that thing. It's I'm forgetting the word she has used, post natally some word, that we are not it's not a clean slate basically. A sex is itself is gendered ki there are certain things. So she's basically questioning the pura wo unquestioned thing ki a child is born and the child is clean slate. She's just questioning that it is not possible that ki kuch hi nahi hai usme. So basically, she's questioning this. Otherwise, the whole exactly what Meda said, it is difficult to understand because she's putting a very difficult terms and theories, which even I find it a bit difficult. I thought we'll discuss about that.
Okay.
But this is the basic thing which I
So
got.
look at this slide. Moira Gatton's basic assertion is that there are no neutral bodies. Because when we said sex is biological, so that's a neutral statement, no? That somebody can be born as a male or a female or anybody else. So even focusing on just male and female bodies, you said, well, this is just a matter of fact. There is no value to it, whether somebody has a male body or female body. It is only by socialization that we create more status, more power in the hands of the men, and in the manner we bring up our daughters and our sons. So what she is saying is that patriarchy is coming from conceptualization of female body as incapable of controlling body fluids, hence whatever men do, and therefore it's an inferior body. So this is the conceptualization. She talks about, one of the psychologists also apart from Freud, that how he has explained transgender. So these are all things, all the explanations of are coming from the basic, without questioning whether the sexual body itself is gendered or not. So it is not the growing up. It is our categorization of the male body as superior as the normal human body that creates to this genderization of also. So genderization, when we say gender, we said it is socialization as you've been brought up. Saroni was making that point very vociferously by showing all those pictures. That this is how we create socialization, social values. Girls should look pretty, they should wear pink, they should wear whatever kind of clothes freely, and men should be straightforward, the squares and those kinds of things. So somewhere that is what she is challenging, that our classification of gender is not coming only from socialization, but it is coming from the categorization of the bodies itself in a hierarchical manner. So the male body is the most superior body, female body is secondary, and certainly third is completely out of that league. So that's got no features of the other, and that's very confusing. So intersex body is is a third category in the hierarchy of the things. So it says, why are the female bodies said? It was because incapable of controlling body fluids, and seen that the young children's body, they cannot control their excreta, they cannot control their fluids coming out of the mouth. किसी का लार निकलता है, किसी का नाक बहता है. They can't do any of that. But as you grow, you gain control. But women's body cannot control the menstrual fluid, and therefore their body is inferior, and therefore whatever the women do is inferior, and whatever the men do is superior. So this is coming. So whatever women do is inferior, whatever men do is superior. And the menstruation in our culture is associated with shame and modesty, and this is what women are supposed to have as their primary characteristics. So from the physical body which menstruates, and you should be, the value has been created that those should be shameful, and therefore they should be ashamed of whatever their status. They should be modest. They should be not, kind of flagging their menstruation with the pride. So all this has led to the characterization that women, when women are exposed, they should feel shameful. If they are raped, they should feel shameful. So therefore, whenever you look at all the provisions, they all talk about modesty of women. Men do not have any modesty. So nothing has been, the values of shame and modesty have been associated. The family feels dishonor if the woman has been molested or raped or whatever has happened, and she runs away. The family is defamed. So the whole concept of honor and shame and modesty and behavioral, what is correct for it, it's all coming from the reference to the female body, which is seen as inferior than the male body. This is among the traits that epitomize femininity for Freud and our culture are passivity, masochism, narcissism, envy, and shame. And what she's suggesting, that these feminine behaviors are not merely the result of patriarchal socialization and conditioning, the strength of which Millett was so admiring, or a discursively constituted category lacking a referent, but additionally, these are the modes of defensive behavior that utilize the culturally shared fantasies about biology. That is, the biology itself a manifestation of and reaction to the ideas that we share about our biology. So women should be hiding their breasts. They should not be walking upright. They should have a dupatta over their bodies. So these are all indicative of that women have to, women's bodies. So you have to have a dupatta. It is not a sociological terminology. So it's not a social. It's not a only a sociological creation. It is coming from the body of the woman that she should hide this. She should hide her body. So this whole pride in the body. The men should be having their chori chhati. The women should not be showing their chori chhati or the big boobs. So somewhere we are certainly leading to the social practices which are coming from the body itself. The body itself is leading to what kind of socialization they should have, because the body can produce. So she goes further. Freud saw the biology of women and men to be unproblematic. He says, no, this is a kind of given fact. And he says, why should the women be passive? And so look at this whole categorization of the biological body functions. What does the ovum do? It is assumed it is passive. Sperm is active because it rushes to meet the ovum. And therefore, the psychology of masculinity, the males and females have to mirror their biology. So their behavior, that they should be active and aggressive, is coming from the reference to their biological body, the sperm in the biological body of the male. The women should be passive because their ovum is passive. So this connection is what creates the hierarchy within the bodies itself. The man actively penetrates the passive vagina. That's how the construction of the biological body was as seen by Freud and accepted by most of the people without questioning. So this has become part of the cultural understanding. This concept has to do with the imaginary anatomy, where the vagina is conceived as a whole or a lack of an organ, and the penis as a phallus. One could just as well, given a different relational mode between men and women, conceive of the penis as being enveloped or embraced by the active vagina. So then the woman's body should be active because the part is interpreted as being an active organ rather than a whole. In this context, an interesting addendum is provided by recent biological research, which maintains that the ovum is not as passive as it appears, as it rejects some sperm and only allows entry or envelopes one sperm of its choice. So lakhs of sperms are released, but it's only one sperm which is chosen by the ovum. So even though we may seem that it is waiting for the sperm to come to it, but it is very choosy. So it's very actively exercising its choice. So if you start looking at the body parts differently, then your perception of what these bodies should do will also change. That's what she's saying. She's saying that the answer does not lie in only resocialization. The answer lies in re-understanding the bodies itself, because the socialization is coming from the construction of the female body as passive and the male body as aggressive, the body itself. So that's what she's kind of challenging the very very lack of questioning, that this whole question that sex is biological and we just stop at that. We do not say that sex of the body itself is constructive in a manner that leads to their socialization. So hence the treat gender, the symptom as the problem is the misrecognize its genes. The origin is coming from the categorization. She's going a step backward. She's saying don't only look at how the socialization is creating the hierarchy. The socialization patterns have evolved because of the manner in which we have categorized the sexual bodies, biological bodies. Is the point clear? You understand this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Anybody else? He refers to that's what Saroni was mentioning. This part she did cover. That the assumption is that the human body at birth is neutral, gender is learned through social environment, and the solution is resocialization. and this will lead to androgynes, people who are not gendered. Major contribution in this manner has been the contribution by psychologists, which have given a relationship between sexuality and socialization. So Robert Stoller, she talks in great length, and his study is seen as a breakthrough in the area of sexuality and in socialization in the context of transsexual. And he has studied various biological anomalies, neuters and hermaphrodites, in order to ascertain the relationship between sex and gender. And he considered the considered the bodies as the transsexuals are biologically normal people. Remember, transsexual is a person. Okay, you know, anyone who knows what is who is transsexual?
Ma'am, a person who has a sex of one, like man or woman, but that person believes itself to be some other sex.
That is considered to be transgender. Transsexual are a step forward. They are so unhappy with their biological body that they actually undergo operations and get their sex changed. So transgender is a person, and we'll come to this terminology. We'll have a whole session on identity. So the transsexual is we are talking about that they had the normal biological bodies, but because they were so psychologically disturbed. And what is the explanation? So he says that the biological sex of a person has a tendency to augment, though not determine, the appropriate gender identity of the sex. This is the normal process, that if you are born with female organs and female characteristics, you will take the socialization of that gender which is appropriate to that sex. However, a person's gender identity is primarily a result of postnatal psychological influences. This is all what Stoller is saying. And these psychological influences on gender identity can completely override the biological fact of a person's sex and result in, for example, the situation is transsexual, that because of the later on development, he's saying, at birth there was nothing wrong, but because of the postnatal categories, and what are those postnatal influences? He says that in all normal infant, there is an initial period of symbiosis with the mother. This symbiosis must be broken for normal masculinity or femininity as a separate and independent identities to develop. That's his assertion. But in some cases, he says the mother is so unwilling to let the child go and develop as an individual that the child becomes so associated with mother's sex that he also cannot get away from there. That's how he explains the male transsexual. But certainly this explanation doesn't tell us how the women feel trapped in a male, how the women, transsexuals, women who think they have got a male body. So this is one of the examples she mentions to say that how psychologists have constructed that the bodies are neutral, bodies got nothing to do with it. It is the socialization alone which constitutes gender. So she is taking this as an example to say this is not correct. There is one has to look at itself, the construction of the body. So this is what her assertion is. Coming back to this whole thing about when he says, there is this initial period of symbiosis with the mother. It also leads to our understanding so we have this other thing also, that how do human beings, men and women, construe this world? So when we look at each other, the Western philosophy is all about usually individualism, that I as an individual must progress. I should have full opportunities. And in the Indian scenario, we think that family is more important. It's of course changing now. We are getting influenced a lot more by the Western approach of individualism also. Here, we think that our interests are subordinate to the family. So if I have to give up a good career because my old parents need me, I'm more willing to do that. Or I should not leave my hometown. I should not leave my relatives. So mobility was not very popular, especially in our generation. It was very few people who moved from their hometown and home, their home, to other places. They'll go sometime and then they with the intention to return, but to settle somewhere else because it gives you more opportunities was not in our environment. So this whole individualism and caring for the other, these are two basic approaches to life. So what should be, what is it that why individualism has become so important? And it is also coming from one of the explanations as to how and it is said that law, we'll keep on repeating the statement that law is male. So law is male because it talks, when you look at jurisprudence, what is jurisprudence about? It is all about rights. That I should have this right, I should have that right, the state should protect my rights. It's all about my rights. Now, what does right indicate? When you say freedom of movement, right? So once you have the right to freedom of movement, then it means that if there is no other person in my sight, I have complete freedom to go anywhere. But if there is another person 2 yards from me, then I cannot go and collide with that person. My right of freedom of movement is restricted by the presence of the other. Rights are always saying I am in conflict with the other because this other will hamper or limit my right. So the rights jurisprudence or approach of the law, which emphasizes on rights, is all about looking at the other as the enemy, as the other. That other is not part of me. And jurisprudence and law is all about securing my place, my individual space, vis-a-vis the other. Women say this is a male thinking. This whole approach towards under the emphasis on rights is coming from the men's experience of how do they construct this world. So going back to Stoller, which says that initially all children have a symbiosis with the mother. They identify with the mother. And this is coming from the natural breastfeeding category. They would not know, certainly the baby does not know I came from the womb also. So, but the baby, first of all, starts recognizing the mother because she's the first carer, she was the provider for food. So the child's first relationship with the other is the mother. And they unify with the mother. But when it comes to, certainly at the time of birth, there is a physical cutting of the umbilical cord. But at a later age, when it comes to puberty, then they need to establish their own identity. For the men, for the sons to become their individuals, now they must cut their emotional umbilical cord from the mother and become like their fathers. So they have to separate themselves from somebody they were so attached to in order to come into their own. For the girls, on the other hand, they don't have to cut that cord. They can continue to like being their mothers and still seen as a good persons. But if the boys do not cut that umbilical cord and do not start asserting their individuality like their fathers, they will not be seen as men. So for the men to establish themselves as men, they must cut their ties from the first contact they've had in their life with their mothers in order to become their own self. For the girls, this is a continuation. That's one explanation as to why the state is established in a manner to create individual spaces for individuals. The feminist approach, or the women, on the other hand, construct of the world as connected. So these are seen as two contrasting values of males' life experiences and the women's life experiences. Women are seen as constructing the world as connected, that you have to take care of the other. That's how their biology is. So when you look at three movements in the biological bodies, where two human bodies come in contact with each other, they are sexual intercourse, pregnancy, and breastfeeding. So when you look at these three instances where two biological bodies come into contact with each other, what happens in that interaction? In the sexual intercourse category, for the men, it is a short-term affair which is giving them pleasure. For the woman, the possibility of pregnancy looms large. So she has to think about the long-term consequences also of that physical contact. So for her, it is not pleasure, but also a possibility of pregnancy. So for her also, even in this interaction, the pleasure is enjoyed jointly by the men and women, but her perception of that is that it can lead to another body in her body. So it's not limited to that one interaction period. Then when it comes to pregnancy, certainly she has to look after, take care of this other in her womb. She has to nurture that. After childbirth, she has to provide food again by breastfeeding. So without which the human beings will not survive, without that care. So care in her care for the other, thinking of the other, is ingrained into the female psyche, because of which she stays with the abusive husband. She lives up with a lot of abuse in her life because she still cares for this other who is so abusive. The care is inbuilt and for her, it was a continuation of the caring relationship which she developed from the childhood, from the infancy, from the mother. So these physical experiences of men and women, as they grow up, lead to their construction of the world. So the woman's world is full of care. When you look at mobile, for example, so each one of has a mobile and it is independent, but it is also connected, without which it could not produce the consequences. No, it cannot have conversations. So even though we have biological bodies which are separate, but psychologically in our relationship with the other, from the woman's perspective, it is a relationship of caring. And therefore, her construction of the world is of care, but the law is all talking about individualization. So individuation is the manner in which we have organized the society. So the law is organized in that manner, the social norms are organized in that manner, and women's experience of growing up is different. So it's also coming from from what Stroller was talking about, that there is a symbiosis as a starting point. So that other psychologists have also developed on this, that how the personality is formed. So once you have formed a personality in a different manner, the expectation from the other are different. The individuation means that the others will look after me, will secure my right. While connectedness means I will look after the other. So what is the better way to organize this world? If you take care of the other, there's no need to have rights, because then there's no fear of the violation of my rights. So that's what the questioning has been, that law needs to be reorganized itself from the perspective of connectedness rather than on the individuation. And therefore, this tinkering of the law without changing the very nature of the law itself is not going to be helpful. So therefore, we need to start looking at how do we construct human beings. So going back to Hobbes' law, Rousseau, we had this innate nature of human being. One saying you are, again, the term never stays with me. What was that? Brutal Hobbes.
Ma'am, tabula rasa.
Mahib, what was it?
Ma'am, tabula rasa.
No, tabula rasa is not the term. Hobbes is saying human beings are. Somebody did
short
mention. I need to write it every semester. I fumble on this one. Short, brutal, no, brutish,
nasty.
Brutish and nasty. So while the others say that no, we're all very caring human beings, we look after each other, and that's no humane instinct of looking after the saving the other is our basic instinct. So here also we are now talking in terms of gender perceptions of who we are. Are we individuals fighting for our existence to the exclusion of others, or are we humans who are caring for each other? And that's what the basic approaches difference is there when we talk about this. So somewhere going back to the critique of sex and gender. So the basic point we are saying is that sex itself has been gendered, and therefore to say that socialization leads to gender is only half of the truth. Certainly, having constructed sex in a manner that leads to the manner in which we socialize. So there is a very innate relationship between how we genderize the basic body, and then it is reinforced by the socialization. So any comments, any questions?
Ma'am, when we talk about biological thing that women are not able to control their periods, and so this makes them a bit inferior, ma'am, we can also say that there are certain hormones which the boys, the other gender can also not control. Like all the hormones they cannot control now. So why
No,
we only
look,
point
look,
out?
hormones are not visible, na? The menstrual blood is visible. So, and
But
it's
why
not a
are we only focusing
so
on
no,
this?
that's where I was bringing this in. That what is visible is the beard and the mustache. So beard and the mustache are not questioned. They're seen as normal. There's nothing shameful about it. There is nothing to hide about it. It does not impact on the modesty of the men or the personality of the men. It actually augments their personality.
That is also uncontrollable hair growth, and but when hair growth occurs in women, it is considered as like you are supposed to wax or shave. That is considered to be inferior. Like anything which is neutral is
No, so
related to women.
that's what we are saying. That whatever happens to the male body is seen as unproblematic. Whatever happens to the female body makes them inferior. So that is how the gender itself is there in the understanding of what body is a good body, what values are appropriate for a particular. So what we were saying earlier was that when it comes to the menstrual blood, but for this, it's such an important blood. It is to be honored. But for it, you will not have another generation. But the value put it is shame, exclusion, untouchability. All that is being put in the name of the, the reference to it being, oh, you can't control it. And you are not mature enough, because if you were mature, you would have been able to control. This is how we construct maturity of the biological body, ability to control. But the fact that there is a very important function which menstrual blood plays, and there is no function which beard and mustache plays, that connection is not made. That there are certain growth which happens in puberty, and it's normal because they have a certain kind of hormones which give rise to the hair growth on their body. Women have that in lesser quantity, as Saloni was mentioning. So hormones are both in the same, but the quantity determines what kind of growth we will have. And that is, but the hormones are to be tested to find out the consequence of the hormone change. We can see in women, we can see it menstruation and body growth. The breast developed, the shape of the body changes. So all that we can see visually. In case of men, what visually we see is the hair growth at all places. So the hair growth is not questioned as a mark of immature body, not able to keep itself beautiful. But this is seen as a sign of manhood. So the projection of the body features of the male body are seen as signs of power, while body features of female body are seen as signs of shame. So this is an interpretation we are giving to the very body. This has got nothing to do with the socialization. The fact that we categorize the body in a certain manner, that has led to a value being given. So whatever happens to women, whatever women do, this is all inferior. Whatever men do, whatever men have, that is a sign of shan, pride, power. So that's what Moira Gayton is drawing our attention to. And I think that's a very important point she makes. And that actually, this whole categorization of body functions as the ones which will determine what they will do, how they will behave, ensures that women are seen as having their appropriate place within family, taking care. Pame says, let me see, what is the question? What is the observation she has made? Men, since the conceptualization is that, okay, Saloni, male and female, sex is social. Soumya says, is that why it is so hard to conceive rape of men, since the conceptualization is that the phallus is aggressive and the vagina passive, and what about rape, sodomy? The terminology has been, that's called sodomy. So it's not that we do not recognize sexual and forced penetration of the male body, but they have got a different name and different consequences of that. So rape has become, has got a social value of shame, and this is in case of women. So men sodomized are not made to become prostitutes, or they do not, no, they are not having, they are not sold out, not sent out of the schools, but all that happens to women. So somewhere it's not that rape of the men do not happen, but what happens in terms of sexual aggression has got a different term for them. I'm not very sure that I understand what Jyoti has written. Gone through operations and changed their sex to another. Acha, she was, I think, talking about transsexual. Yeah, that's correct. Endogamy was prevalent. Then we have, but the question is why? What is the basis of this interpretation? It seems that the inference are just in the. So I'm not very sure what was this in context of. Do you want to speak?
Ma'am, 1 second.
Ma'am, so what is the basis exactly? Like if we look at it now, the way we are talking, that menstruation is the basis of birth. Like if you don't have menstruation, you won't give a birth, and beards are just physical appearance. So how we have started looking menstruation with a so inferior image just because it is of a different, it occurs in females.
No, look.
Ma'am,
Yes,
that is my question exactly. That it seems like a chicken and the egg situation, like which came first? Because we are saying, we are agreeing that, like, say, hair growth in men is not controlled, and the menstrual fluid in the women is also not controlled. But we were establishing the interpretation that women are inferior. It is because of their non-control over the menstrual fluid. So that's the thing. I mean, we are
combination. Menstruation is one example. Then the ovum being passive, the woman having a hole, not an organ. All these are constructions which are leading to a cumulative consequence. So it's not only one factor. The manner in which the body features of the features of the female body are interpreted. It's not that that is the only interpretation possible. There are different ways, and that's what Moira Gatton says, that we could have focused on another aspect of the ovum, but we did not focus on that. So when you look at various disciplines, how is the history told? What is the history about? So when you look at every discipline has focused on what men are doing. So kings were conquering, soldiers were fighting, but the fact that it resulted into orphans, it resulted into abduction of women and rape, it resulted into so much of poverty to the general population, all that is not part of history, the way we have been teaching history. When you look at political thought, again, we have excluded women from that. Why was it such a big struggle in America for women to get election right, not the right to vote? What are the objections to, why should they not be given? What do you think will be the possible explanations as to why they were denied the right to vote? What do you think?
Ma'am, right. So that's my question, where we are talking about how sex in itself, it is gendered, and it's how we conceptualize it which leads to further interpretation, and and its conceptualization is exactly what affects our socialization. So again, it becomes really
but Soumya, the point is that most of the time we want to find the answer in socialization. We do not go back behind the socialization norms which have come from the body categorization or understanding of the body. So she's only saying this, that we have to talk of both at both levels. Today, there's a lot of conversation. Menstruation is a word we can speak in public, but there were a time when you could not even speak the word menstruation. This is not a civilized word. There are lots of words we don't speak because of the norms we have created around those words. So it's not only that you are not to be declaring that you are menstruating to the public, but also you will not even speak the word menstruation. So even though it is a life essential element of human body, it was categorized to such a such a dark corner that it cannot be seen, visible, or heard. So this is all coming from different disciplines coming to the same consequence, the same, that's kind of reinforcing. Political science reinforced that, the history did that, psychology did that, medicine characterize the body similarly. So when you look at all the disciplines, the way they were constructing, they were all referring to the women body as being the inferior body. And that became so much part of the socialization pattern coming from the body. So the reason for the right to vote for not being given to women, what have they got to do with right to vote? What will they do with it? Because their sphere is family. Family is not political. And political space requires your application of mind. You have got no experience of the world, so you will not be able to choose appropriately. Believe this is what the reasoning was in saying you will not have the right to vote because you do not have the capacity to choose a correct candidate. Your job is to look after the family. Your sphere is private sphere, and that's where Bateman comes in. She brings it all out, that how the division of words, nature and power, nature and culture, and morality and power, these are seen as contradictory and as separate categories. Women by nature are supposed to be moral. So therefore today when we see a report, it specifically says that such and such woman officer was found corrupt. Men officer is found corrupt is second critique, this is how men are. But if a woman officer in the same position is found corrupt, this makes big news. This is corrupt because this is not characteristic of women. Women are supposed to be moral human beings. So men can be corrupt human beings. Women are not supposed to be corrupt human beings. So there are lots of this whole construction of woman, the woman as a biological category, which should lead to certain kind of behavior and actions. So that's what is being questioned. And I think that's a very challenging thought, to start looking at the body itself to find out that can you find rationale for exclusion of women from various spheres because of their body, and the body which does not require certain things. So this body, because this is meant to procreate, deal with raw materials. Raw material means young children. They are not socialized yet. They have to be beaten up into proper behavior. As children, who is your first teacher? Is your mother. So the mothers are supposed to deal with the raw human beings to make them into robust citizens of tomorrow. So that's your job. And public sphere, also what we'll come to is also whether the private sphere is also, because we have this other phrase called personal is political. So the division has been made that the public sphere is political, private sphere is not political. In private sphere, no politics happen. It's in the public sphere that the politics happen. And for that, you need to be worldly wise. But because women are supposed to remain at home and look after the family, that is their forte. They can be the best persons within that household, but outside they are completely lost. Ankit, you have a question?
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes.
Ma'am, we read in the criticism about the Freud's theory about the penis envy. Is it right or is it justified? Do you agree with it?
we agree with it. We won't be talking gender justice now. If there is a penis envy in women, then men should have a womb envy. They don't have a womb, which actually is life-giving. So no, that's what this whole construction of penis envy, the women body being passive, all these are constructions which has helped us in justifying the socialization, the gendered socialization. That is a small point actually. That and
There
it is
was the
coming.
concept of inferiority, that we feel inferior. Yeah, but in terms of organ, we are not inferior. We think that.
No, but that's what, that women are made to feel ashamed of their body by their socialization, and they should be feel ashamed because they are inferior by body. So they have an inferior body, they should
Ma'am,
feel ashamed.
about more body, more rights. It was the concept there in feminist criticism. More body, more rights.
I do not know what is more body.
I was confused there. I was not agreeing, but just I was reading there. It was the Freud's theory, and I don't agree at all with Freud's even one single theory.
Freud has been our biggest enemy in terms of ideology creation. And today we are questioning a lot more. But there were times when I was a student of political science, there was no critique whatsoever of liberal theory of state. We were not told that how women were excluded from this whole conception of the liberal thought of state. So it's only later on that no questioning has started. Till 1979, we were not even questioning the judicial approach to women. In rape cases, what kind of cases were all coming? It was in 79 the first time we realized that how women with immoral past sexual, having past sexual experience were considered as immoral and unreliable in Mathura's case. So it's only a time, sometimes something strikes and then people start raising voices. Sometimes it is men, sometimes it is women. So till Raja Ram Mohan Rai got, very discomfort with sati. Nobody was questioning sati. So there are lots of examples. In fact, when you look at this whole Johar thing, it is presented in such a praiseworthy terms that look how brave these women were who committed Johar. But look at the helplessness of these women, knowing that what will happen to them. So they focus how you present a particular event can give you a different insight into the scenario. And there are more than one way to look at the same situation. As lawyers, we know that. And in this paper, we are focusing, we are certainly focusing on the gender aspect of the discrimination, but you can see that from any angle. You can look at it from the religion perspective, you can take it from the caste perspective, you can take it from the economy perspective, education, everything, education, your religion, your community, your sex, all gives you power and disempowerment. And in fact, I've added one more article in the reading list without being it a prescribed reading, which is talking about intersectionality. That when there is a woman and she's Dalit, then they're at double disadvantage. And it's a very good article looking at Nalsa and Vishakha judgment, that how intersectionality has been completely ignored in these judgments. They're only looking at women, but the fact that Mathura was a Dalit woman. In fact, Mathura was a Dalit woman. The other one was the Bhavri Devi. So Bhavri Devi was a Kumar, and she has been conflated with Dalit. But the judgment nowhere in the Vishakha judgment, which is coming from Bhavri Devi's rape case, there's a very minimal reference to Bhavri Devi. We've completely obliterated the difference. There's a very new interpretation, new examination of these two cases. I really like that article. It's at the bottom of the list if you look at our case materials. I've added it into the Dropbox. So certainly this whole challenging has come at a much later age, because initially when the women were enslaved because of their biology, the state was created as a place as an institution which will regulate the public sphere where men were. And when women were stepping into that public place, it did not hamper or did not change their responsibilities in the private sphere. So this whole division between private and public leads to, is starting from this genderization of the bodies itself. We'll stop at that today. We'll continue tomorrow. I will encourage you to read Pateman's article, What is the full name? Carol Pateman. Very, very interesting article. Rajesh Talwar is for our next week. We do not have today is what date? Okay, so tomorrow is tutorial class and we're still slightly behind. So tomorrow we will look at Carol Pateman. Okay, mark कर दिया सबने attendance? नहीं किया तो कर दो. And we'll meet tomorrow. Tomorrow is what time? Tomorrow is 4:45. You think there's something to think about from today's class? Or a lot to think about?
A lot to think about. Ma'am, can we discuss today's discussion as well tomorrow?
Yeah,
I have a few more questions.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Thank you.